It is 9 a.m. and you are now live.
Shall we go ahead and begin? Okay. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone who is here. I am Eileen McMahon. I am the chair of the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, and this is our March 26th, 2021 meeting. This is open to the public and it's being recorded by the City of Asheville. We are a joint committee of the City of Asheville and Buncombe County, directed to oversee the policies and procedures related to homeless issues in the city and county, and also to serve as the continuum of care for this part of the state of North Carolina. All committee members and staff are participating virtually, and we ask of you to all be patient as we continue to work out how this actually does work. So we are streaming live through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website, and also linked on the committee page. And we have an option for the public to listen live by phone. So thank you for coming. And the first thing we will do is take the roll, which serves as our introduction of committee members. And Brian will go ahead and do that.
Yes, and Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I have a couple of things I'd like to add once we've gotten the roll called. And I believe you mentioned something you wanted to mention as well. So, okay, so Sarah Copley.
Just
if you'll just
say aye or raise your hand. I think everybody's muted, so
yeah, so everybody could unmute as we call the roll. Sarah?
Hey, you might jump off and jump back on.
Yeah.
One and only trick, you know.
Jason?
Present.
Elia Diaz? Amy Hobson let me know in advance that she would not be here today. Tamia Jones is going to be late. Eileen is here. David Nash?
Here.
Tara McCracken?
Here.
Tim McEllier?
Here.
Parker Smith?
Here.
And Adam, you're substituting for Joelle, correct?
Yes, sir. Present.
Okay. Randy Stout?
Yes, here.
Okay. Meredith Schweitzer?
Here.
Jennifer Teague? Okay. Madam
I'm
Chair.
here. Can you guys hear me now?
Who's that?
Sarah.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you. Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I know he's got an awful lot on his plate, so we don't want to hold him for any longer than we need to. But I wanted the committee to give a special recognition to Mr. Sam Powers, who has been the City of Asheville's Economic and Community Development Director for a really long time, and has led that department and served as leadership within the city on just a whole lot of things that have happened. I happened to read on an internal post just all of the accomplishments that he's been part of and the improvements that he's helped make in this city. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to Sam Powers. His last day at the city is, I believe, next Wednesday. And I just wanted the committee to give him special recognition and thank him for everything he's done to support this group and to support the entire community. So, Sam, if there's anything you'd like to say as your farewell to this committee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian. The only thing I would say is, and I know everyone on the call knows this, the thanks needs to go out to the staff that works day in and day out on these issues, whether it's the city or the agencies that you're working with, your leadership and your service, being willing to commit your time and your energy in what we all know is one of the community's greatest critical need areas. So I've been fortunate to be able to get to know a lot of you over the past few years. I'll be in the community. I look forward to volunteering in a number of ways. Don't know exactly what the future holds, but after 43 years on the job, I think it's time to take at least a month's breaks. But I will be in the community, and again, I'm grateful, Brian, for you and Emily, Jonathan Jones, Christina, all of the folks that have worked and continue to work with the HIAC. I'm grateful to you all, and again, I'm grateful to the committee. So thank you, and thank you for taking time to let me make those remarks. And I do. This is one of those rare days. I had an 8 o'clock meeting with the Economic Development Coalition, and then we have an important meeting at 9:30 of the city's Housing and Community Development Committee to talk about community development block grant funding. And so I will be leaving at 9:30, but I'm going to stay here as long as I can. So thank you again. And Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and we all wish you the best.
Thank you, Sam.
Indeed. Thank you, Sam.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
And Eileen, I think you also had another comment you wanted to make regarding one of our members this morning.
Yes, I wanted to recognize Meredith for the award she just received as the 2020 Outstanding Woman in Nonprofit Leadership by the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. So congratulations to Meredith for a well-deserved recognition, and thank you for everything you do. And we hope you continue to go forward with your good work. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Well done, Meredith.
Thank you.
The next thing, we have a consent agenda, which includes only the minutes from the last meeting. So if there is no objection, I would ask that we have unanimous consent for, is that how we do it?
Well, we just
Whatever.
Yeah.
Anybody have any objection to approving the minutes?
Well, we have to have a motion and a second, and then a roll
Okay.
call vote. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we need a motion and a second and a
I'll
roll
move
call
it.
vote to approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes.
I'll move that we approve the
Thank
consent
you.
agenda. Mhm.
Second.
Who was the second?
Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Sarah,
Approve.
Jason,
Approve.
Tamia, we're voting on the approval of the consent agenda for the minutes. There's been a motion and a second. You're next. Do you want to vote or abstain on approval of the minutes? I think we'll come back to her. Eileen, your vote.
Approve.
David,
Aye.
Tara,
Approve.
Tim,
Approve.
Parker,
Aye.
Adam, standing in for Joel.
Approve.
Yep. Randy
Approve.
and Meredith.
Approve.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I believe that takes care of that. So, and Madam Chair, we also talked about moving Brian Meffin's report on COVID-19 plan up on the agenda at this point. If that's okay with you, we'll move that up.
Yes. And,
You guys ready for me?
is that,
Yep.
okay. Brian
right.
Messman can go ahead.
All right. So I wanted to give you an update on where we were on COVID-19 protection for our homeless community. So when we last met, we talked about we put in place a testing program for monitoring COVID within the community, and we had plans for our vaccinations. And I'm happy to report that system-wide, we have done a fantastic job through a whole myriad of efforts in order to get both our homeless community started to be vaccinated and the vital homeless service provider infrastructure vaccinated. So many of the service providers reached out to different contacts to get their staff vaccinated when we were in group 2, which was 65 and older. And on March 3rd, when we moved into our group 3, which was all of our essential workers. So the VA was very helpful out at the VRQ in getting them, both staff and clients, vaccinated. Several providers were able to reach out to some of our FQHC partners, like MAHEC, Winches, Appalachian Mountain, and get some of their staff vaccinated. And then we held 2 community vaccination events. The first was on March the 3rd at Haywood Street Congregation. And at that event, we vaccinated 213 people with using the Pfizer vaccine, which is a 2-dose vaccine regime. That population was primarily service provider staff and clients over 65. And so we had 63 clients that we vaccinated that day. And the balance were staff at service providers. And then at our March 24th event, again at Haywood Street, we were able to procure, thanks to Dr. Bill Hathaway over at Mission Health, for the community at large, he secured 400 doses of the J&J 1-dose vaccine, which was a fantastic acquisition for the community. 180 of those doses were actually used at the jail because we're moving into group 4, which is people who live in congregate settings, which is why our homeless population now qualifies at large to be vaccinated. So we did the jail, we did 1 small mental health facility, and we had 205 doses that we administered between our event at Haywood Street and a concurrent event at the Western North Carolina Rescue Mission. Those 205 doses of J&J were administered, plus another 179 second doses of Pfizer vaccine for the people who went through our March 3rd clinic. So in total, we vaccinated over 400 people, staff and clients, and community members who support the homeless community, which is a tremendous accomplishment given the fact that we've only been in group 4 for 2 days now, according to the state. So I think at large, our community is probably well ahead of most other communities, and it's a complete credit needs to go to every one of the homeless service providers out there who, by hook and by crook, have been working diligently to get their staff vaccinated, their clients vaccinated, to help mobilize getting clients to our vaccination events. So we've really accomplished the first 2 legs of this. Now, with the bulk of the staff now vaccinated, most of our service providers have over 80% of their staff vaccinated, which is a better acceptance of the vaccine rate than Mission Hospital has, by the way. So kudos to all of our service providers. But we also, at our second dose clinic, we had an 89% return rate, which is almost on par with what the county sees for its return rate at 93%. So that's, again, a tremendous accomplishment, just getting back to all of the people who were vaccinated on the 3rd. And so now what our challenge is to get out into the community and start to reach out to the people who didn't get their second dose. And we have 24 individuals who did not get their second dose of Pfizer. So we've got to track them down and get them back in to get their second dose, as well as start to reach out to other homeless who may not have come into Haywood Street. And so Beloved and MAHEC are now starting a pilot program to go out and do street outreach for vaccinations. And so they've secured a small supply of J&J vaccine and are going to be hitting the streets here this week in order to start that program. So, and then I think over the next week, we're going to do sort of a retrenchment and try to get everybody into the HMIS system and figure out how many people we need to reach and then what the best mechanism to reach them. And so we may run some smaller vaccine clinics over the next couple of months in order to reach some of the scragglers. But I don't think we're going to need to have another one of these mass events because we will have gotten such a deep penetration into the population already. So that's the bulk of my report. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Well, thank you for that. It sounds like a great job. But anybody else? Anybody have a question, comment?
I think we are truly ahead of most of the rest of the state in getting protecting our homeless provider network, as well as our homeless clients out there. So I think it is a tremendous community achievement.
Great, and thank you.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
The next item on the agenda is funding updates from Brian and Emily. Brian and Emily?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So, yeah, absolutely. So, there was a document that went out as part of the meeting package that showed what allocations have been made in our regular emergency solutions grant annual process, as well as both phases of emergency solution grant, phase 1 and phase 2. We also had news in recent weeks of there was not a continuum of care notice of funding availability competition during 2020. But they did conditionally award to NC 501 about a total of about 1.8 million, which is about 500,000 more than we would normally anticipate. But they made some adjustments related to fair market rents in the city for those projects that are doing rental assistance, permanent supportive housing, and or leasing of facilities. So we got a pass on the NOFA competition last year, but it's going to be back to business as usual with the competition for 2021. I suspect that'll be announced on the regular timeline sometime in May or June, and our ever steadfast finance committee will again get to evaluate and rank and score. I'm not aware of any particular changes that are going to be part of the process this year. So we don't have a whole lot of details about what's in the American Rescue Plan that was passed a couple of weeks ago in Congress. We do know there are substantial amounts that are allocated specifically to homelessness. I don't know that we have a ton of information yet about what specifically will be coming to Asheville, but that includes a special allocation of home dollars that's targeted to acquisition and rehab of existing facilities. David, I don't know if you want to make any comment about the emergency vouchers that are going to be part of that for people experiencing homelessness. But it's a substantial package, and we hope to know more in the next few weeks on that. So, David, is there anything you wanted to mention about just the vouchers or any other rental assistance that's part of that package?
I don't have details on that, right?
Okay.
I do. I understand there are two different groups of vouchers. One that is kind of a regular voucher increase that's focused on people experiencing homelessness.
Right.
And then there's another one that's essentially a temporary emergency voucher that will, and we don't know how many we're going to get or of either type at this point. It would be good probably to have other conversations about those long-term homeless vouchers to see if we need to put together a collaboration on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The emergency vouchers, as I understand it, will end whenever the person who's on it goes off the program.
Right. That's
So they won't be renewed indefinitely.
Emily, is there anything you wanted to add?
I certainly don't have any additional detail to add. I just would say I think this is a really exciting opportunity for our community. I think we can take a giant step forward in ending homelessness with this huge infusion of resources. So it's going to be a lot more to come. I think there's a lot to figure out, but I do think it's a really exciting moment in time here.
I do have just, what is the fair market rent determined to be here now?
David, you're probably the most qualified in the room to speak to that question.
It's a good question. I don't have them on top of my head. Eileen,
Okay.
I can probably pull them up while we talk and share them on the screen, but it starts at somewhere around just over $1,000 for a 1-bedroom and goes up to
Okay.
$1,400 for a 4-bedroom. I don't know. I'll
Okay.
double check and get you the numbers, but
Yeah, I mean,
since we're talking about that, the reason we have those numbers is because we paid for a local rent study for the Asheville MSA 2 years ago, and we're due for that again. If we don't do it, then we're likely to fall back on HUD's obscure census data calculation, and they will drop back down to what they were, or somewhere close to what they were 2 years ago. So,
Okay.
So if anybody wants to share the cost of that study, just let me know.
David, are you at liberty to say what that cost was?
Last time it was $60,000. I don't know what it'll be this time.
Okay.
You're always
Well-
very generous about sharing that those kinds of opportunities. I just put a link in the chat to the current FMR, and
Okay.
David, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but there's also that link is specifically to FMR. Some portions of housing programs in our community actually use a payment standard that is a bit higher than those amounts that you see in that link.
Yes. The Housing Authority for the voucher program, the Housing Choice Voucher Program, including VASH and Mainstream, which is housing for people with disabilities, and the new housing for people experiencing homelessness vouchers, is about 20% higher than the fair market rents, based on the flexibility that we have.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, it might be good between now and the next committee meeting for us to think about trying to come back with some sort of resolution from this committee that would advance to City Council and County Commission to do everything we can to support the cost of getting that study done. It's in the
Sure.
certainly the best interest of our homeless community and getting them housed, and in the best interest of the community at large. So I'm happy to work on that with you between now and our next meeting.
Great. Okay.
Can't make any promises, David, but we'll try to make some noise.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the data update from Emily. We've had a lot happen since our last meeting, so.
Yeah.
Emily?
So I have mostly the same update actually as the last meeting
Okay.
in terms of our data. I think agencies are really doing a great job in HMIS. I'm happy to say that. And I think our data are continually improving in both quantity and in quality. No changes in agencies that are participating in HMIS since our last meeting. So just as a reminder, current participating agencies are ABCCM, Homeward Bound, Trinity Place, First at Blue Ridge, Salvation Army, Elida, Haywood Street Respite, and Sunrise. That is, I guess, actually a change since our last meeting. So Sunrise was funded through ESG CV, and they've not yet begun doing that work. They haven't gone to contract yet, but all of that activity will take place in HMIS, and they have done all of their training, so they're in the system and ready to go. So that means we have most of the homeless service system participating in HMIS. We are missing the rescue mission and TCLI, which is a housing program through VIA, and HOPWA, which is a housing program through WNCAP for folks with HIV or AIDS. So and productive discussions with those folks about data collection and sort of moving in that direction. So I feel really optimistic about getting actual community-wide coverage, actual community-wide data. The other piece, I think I talked about this last time, is HUD-VASH, the housing program through the VA, has done a great job with data sharing with us. They're not in HMIS, but at the federal level, there's a new plan that's still in the works in terms of the technicalities at higher levels than the local level. But the VA mandated system will be able to provide an export of HUD-VASH data that we can then import into HMIS quarterly. So that's on its way, where it's not yet here, but it is in the works. And then just one other thing on data, we, as you know, we use HMIS to submit these annual HUD reports that are required. And since our last meeting, I've submitted the longitudinal systems analysis and also system performance measures. I'm happy to talk about any of that you all are interested in. I believe I said last time that because those are both retrospective, so they're looking at prior federal fiscal years when we didn't have as much data in HMIS, didn't have as much community coverage. I don't think they're actually highly reflective of our community. I don't know how valuable they are. Historically, I do think going forward, as we have increasing input into HMIS, those reports will become really meaningful for us. And then lastly, the point in time and the housing inventory count are both coming up. HUD has not yet published a deadline for those and not yet opened the portal for us to be able to submit that. So I don't have data to share with you yet, but I would certainly imagine by our next meeting, we should have that ready to share. So that's it for me on data. Do y'all have any questions?
I'm curious about why VIA isn't participating in the HMIS. It seems like they should be. Is there a particular reason that they haven't been participating?
I don't know that I could really answer that, but I would say that they've been really open to jumping in with TCLI. You know, what's complicated for them is that they cover such a large geography, and HMIS is COC specific. So for them to enter, like if they have a program that serves 4 COCs, they have to be in 4 different HMIS elements.
Right. Okay.
It's not uncomplicated on their end, but they are willing, and we are moving that discussion forward.
Okay. Okay. So it's more of a technical issue than a philosophical or whatever issue.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, you know, I'm sure I've said this before, HMIS is a pretty heavy lift in terms of getting into the system. Once agencies and programs and staff are in the system, I don't think the data entry is that cumbersome, but it is it's a pretty big mountain to climb to get into the system initially.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Our next agenda item is other staff updates, which is back to Emily and Brian.
I'm sorry, let me actually back up just one second. I just saw Tamia's face on the screen and wanted to mention that Helpmate, when I was talking through the agencies and HMIS, just wanted to mention that Helpmate is not able to participate in HMIS.
Sure.
So the requirement is that victim service providers participate in a comparable database, not in HMIS. So I just wanted to mention that for folks who weren't familiar, that they're neither excluded nor trying to exclude themselves. They're just using a comparable system.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, the next item would be the governance committee update.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That's also Emily's.
Okay, back to Emily.
So hopefully you all saw that staff report. I will do my best to talk this through. So HMIS in North Carolina, there are 2 separate implementations of HMIS. The implementation that we participate is made up of 9 COCs and sort of managed by a governance committee that interfaces with our HMIS lead, which is the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. They interface with our software vendor, which is WellSky. All of those folks work to keep us HUD compliant, make sure that we have HUD data standards in place, that we have the ability to do all this reporting that I've been talking about. and provide some technical assistance. The governance committee is made up of representatives from each continuum of care. So I serve on that for us, Brian also. And the governance committee is staffed by a project manager. Currently, the governance committee is exactly that. It's just a governance committee, and United Way of Forsyth County has been serving as the fiscal agent for that staff position. So there was a grant to fund that staff position. And then there's been some ongoing funding through ESG for some special projects that United Way is also the fiscal sponsor on. There is discussion at the governance committee right now about incorporating, and the governance committee will be voting on that at the April meeting. I think the idea is that it would remove the need for that fiscal sponsor piece and just create some additional sort of stability and opportunity to build out that organization. That's the whole story. I'm here to talk to you about endorsing that or not. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I don't have a particular recommendation. I don't know that it will change very much for us on the ground or in terms of our ability to use HMIS. But we will need to vote on that at the upcoming meeting.
Do we have contracts with them, or how do we interact now? Is it formalized?
With United Way?
No, with HMIS.
Yes. So NCHMIS is the name of the implementation. So that governance committee, kind of akin to HIAC. And then each COC has a contract with the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness for HMIS access and support.
Okay. And so what's the relationship between Michigan and NCHMIS then? Do they work for Michigan?
NCHMIS, so the governance committee is responsible for choosing the HMIS lead and went through a process to identify the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. You all probably were involved in, some of you were probably involved in that. I don't remember what year it was, 2015 maybe, as the HMIS lead. Does that make sense?
It's complicated.
Well, I'm sure it's complicated. Unfortunately, I do these things, so I have probably more questions than are relevant. Yeah, okay. I'll be okay. I'll take your advice on that.
As Emily said, I mean, I don't know if the staff has any recommendation. David, is there something?
This is something to ponder for the staff and for the committee, I guess, to some extent. But so full disclosure, I've been a member of the board of NCCEH. Because of challenges with the Michigan implementation, I was one of the people who voted to take NCCEH out of that system. I know there's been tension at different times over the years, but there are changes happening at NCCEH. I cycled off the board last Friday. Michael Woods is representing Asheville Buncombe on that board now. And there will be a new executive director soon. The board also hired Tyrone Lindsay to fill some positions that have been sitting vacant for a long time, including the data focused positions. So I don't know if this is an opportunity for the governance committee to talk with NCCEH about creating a unified statewide system again, either in one direction or another, but I'll just put that out there for you all to consider.
Yeah, thank you. There has been some discussion at the governance committee about kind of frequency of putting that contract out for bid and wanting to be sure that we don't just settle in, but that we do go through that process regularly. Conversation hasn't gotten further than that at this point, but.
It's just, there might be an opportunity now to rethink some decisions that were made in the past on a statewide basis. That's all I have.
So Madam Chair, I guess, this is something that, as a continuum of care, we need to vote to endorse or not to endorse so we can provide that information back to the NCHMIS folks. So if you want to entertain a motion, I guess the motion would be yay to endorse or nay to not endorse. But
Jennifer has something to say.
I have a question. I understand that staff doesn't have a recommendation, but I'm wondering if staff can maybe just share the pros or cons of doing either or.
Yeah. I know. I'm sorry to not have a recommendation. I realize that's not ideal. So the pros of incorporating are really removing that fiscal sponsor relationship with United Way. So it would mean being able to manage that. I guess this is both a pro and a con, actually being able to manage that piece ourselves as the governance committee or as the implementation. And then some liability protection is the other pro around incorporating. I don't know that there is a con. I don't know that I could identify a con.
What liabilities do we have to be protected from?
I mean, you're probably a better person to answer that than I am, actually.
Well, I would be if I understood what we were doing, but I honestly don't understand what we're doing. And I'll probably abstain from the vote because I don't understand enough about it to make a decision. I'm sorry.
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Emily, I think, we've been asked to say yay or nay, but, I'm not sure that it would matter if we just chose not to take a particular stand on this. I suppose that's also within the realm of possibility. I kind of agree with David. I think, maybe an opportunity here sometime in the future to get back to a true statewide implementation. That would be great if that could happen, but that's really not part of this particular consideration. So, Madam Chair, it's your discretion. And if you want to call for a motion, if you want to table it for some additional discussion and information, I think all those options are on the table.
Jennifer has raised her hand again.
I have another follow-up question. So Emily, if I understand correctly, are you saying there would be additional workload that would then come on to someone else? And if so, okay, so there would be no additional workload or?
No, so there is currently a staff position for the governance committee. It's that the funding for that position and the HR, all of that comes through a fiscal sponsor, and that fiscal sponsor would be removed, but it would still be the same. We would still have the same staff capacity.
And who would cover the cost of that then if there's no fiscal sponsor?
Well, even now the cost is covered through grants that are applied for by NCHMIS.
Okay.
The fiscal sponsor is just like the pathway for those grants, but not actually providing any funding.
Okay.
Yes.
So the one potential con to the scenario that I just suggested is that once it's incorporated as its own nonprofit, there will be potentially less impetus to try to reunite. I don't know if that's true or not. I think it's personally, I think we have enough nonprofits in the world to save everyone. But so I don't see it as a super high priority. But I'm not on the governance committee and don't fully understand all the ins and outs of that. But I think if there were going to be some consideration, and there's a lot of history and a lot of strong personalities involved, so it may not be a realistic thing. But once it's its own corporation, then I don't know what that negotiation is about. Is the question whether NCHMIS is going to take over NCCEH, or how do these two nonprofits talk to each other about shared data, resources, and databases for HMIS? So,
Meredith raised her hand. Meredith. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Well, and I'm still a little confused, but I know in hearing Emily share that there isn't really a con to doing that. I guess my question is, what is the risk of us not endorsing the incorporation? If we were to abstain from any kind of stance, what is the risk of that?
I can't identify one. And I'm sorry to be so neutral in this discussion. But I don't see that incorporation will make a significant difference for our community in any direction. So if it happens or if it doesn't happen, I don't know that that changes very much at all for us at the COC level. I do think what David just described is accurate. And, if NCHMIS did incorporate, I do think that would be sort of a fork in the road in terms of reintegrating with NCCH down the road for statewide data. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be something worked out around data sharing, which is often poorly attempted right now. But it would create an additional structure to, untangle before some statewide implementation could occur.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Do we have a motion on this? I mean, my sense would be to table it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the governance committee will be voting on incorporating or not at the April 12th meeting, I believe it is, which means I'll need to vote at that April 12th meeting. I can abstain from the vote. If you all, that's all.
I mean, it sounds like there are political things going on, and I hate to get involved in political things when I don't understand what they are. So I would probably, personally, I think I would abstain from anything we did. I trust you implicitly to do what is best, or not. I don't, right?
So then would we actually be making a recommendation to ask Emily to abstain at the meeting versus tabling?
I don't know. Let's,
I think the suggested motion was to either endorse or not to endorse the incorporation. Certainly we could, Emily could report that we chose not to take a vote in either direction, and that we suggested that she abstain from the vote in April. So
Can I offer one more suggestion?
yeah.
And I realize I'm throwing a lot of, it is a political issue, Eileen, you're right. And I'm not taking any, I'm no longer affiliated, I'm not taking any political side on how this should, but we could ask Emily to ask the governance committee to postpone this decision, so that, there could be a conversation, a statewide conversation around reintegrating. Again, I have no stake in that process, except I think it is a little confusing that we have 87 counties or 88 counties under one system and 12 under a different one. But I also, that conversation is a can of worms. So, I don't want to make a big deal about it. But my suggestion, if I were voting on it, if Emily were asking me what to do, my recommendation would be to ask them to postpone it and see if there can be further conversations with the new executive director at NCCEH when that person is hired.
would you like to make that as a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do
I
we?
second that.
Okay, so we have a motion, and the motion has been seconded. Can we restate the motion? Essentially, as I understand it, would be to ask Emily to request that the vote be postponed for further conversation. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay.
Or that they table it. for further consideration and conversation around the United State
Okay.
license.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
I have a discussion point. If that request is denied, do we need to include anything about like if that request is denied, then we have no vote?
I don't think so.
I think Emily can figure that out herself.
Yes, we'll leave it up to Emily. So we need a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Brian, do you do that? Christina's still here?
Okay. So
Okay.
Sarah,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Tamia,
Aye.
Eileen,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Tara,
Aye.
Tim, Parker,
Aye.
Adam on Joelle's behalf. Was that an aye or a nay?
Can you raise your hand? Adam?
Yeah.
Is that,
Okay.
Sorry, I had to star 6 again. Aye.
okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Randy,
Aye.
Meredith,
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Thanks y'all for slogging through that, and I apologize again. I appreciate it.
Okay, so now we are into other staff updates.
Emily, you want to go first on this one?
Still me, Code Purple. Code Purple, I think, has gone really, really well this winter. I have a few data points to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all have. So as you know, Code Purple has only been operating by the Rescue Mission at First Congregational Church since December 1st. They've had capacity for 50 people there, 30 men and 20 women and children. I think operationally it's gone really well. I talked to both Michael and to the pastor at First Congregational this week, and both of them were really positive about how the whole experience has been. Since December 1st, Code Purple has operated 65 nights and provided 2,062 bed nights to people. 379 unduplicated people have stayed there, which is interesting to me. That is a higher number than either Michael or I would have anticipated. And we did, Code Purple, of course, operates when the weather is 32 or below. So hasn't traditionally had a stop date. It's just been anytime the weather hits that point, we operate. We are setting a stop date this year just because of the location, because it's an offsite location. They need to be able to turn that space back over to the church. He needs to be able to reoccupy that space. And so we've set April 17th as the end date for that. So from the 18th forward, we won't have Code Purple available. That's it for me on Code Purple, but again, happy to answer any questions you all have.
Any questions?
So our operation at Red Roof Inn, 60 rooms that have been provided there since last May 11th, still operational. As of last night, to date, from May 11th last year through yesterday, 145 people served. There were 62 currently as of last night, with an average stay of about 137 days. We've agreed with Homeward Bound that as our operating partner doing the essential daily operations there, that as of May 1st, as rooms are vacated, we will no longer fill those rooms. City Council authorized the funding and operation of this through June 30. So as of June 30, hopefully we'll have, much more sort of critical mass around getting people vaccinated, additional housing resources coming into the community. So I think everybody was in agreement that it will be safer to go ahead and proceed to close that operation down. Red Roof Inn's been a great corporate partner, but I think they want to get back to sort of business as usual, especially during the busiest summer months for the hospitality industry. So it's been ongoing. It's operated remarkably well with remarkably few hiccups, and now we're in the process of the city's in the process of trying to recoup from FEMA all the expenses that we've advanced on this. And so I spent a lot of time talking to people at FEMA and talking to our consultant, and Meredith's been a part of a lot of those conversations too. So we're getting through it. So
Any more questions, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree. I think overall it's been really successful. I know it's been a big project for a lot of stakeholders, but I think the impact has been significant. And I think in terms of the public health goals and outcomes, it has been highly successful. I know when we've had, I actually got my own vaccine at the Red Roof Inn a couple of weeks ago. We had a strong participation. And I think our ability to be able to bring services on site to meet people where they are has been incredibly beneficial, and has been one of the greatest benefits of this whole thing in terms of being able to do testing on site and getting them vaccinated, while of course keeping them safe from our clients safe from coronavirus. So I just wanted to say, as challenging as it has been a wonderful project, and I'm really glad that we did take it on.
Yes, and thank you for all of your work on that as well. Okay, so it looks like our next agenda item is 2021 priorities, and that's with me. Okay, so we have a lot going on in 2021. Our 5-year plan is at its end, and we have, as we all know, been constrained organizationally because of our COVID protocols. And just to review briefly, we are subject to public meeting laws, which is why when we have this meeting, we do it remotely, and we are being recorded and broadcast live by the city of Asheville. We do have public participation today. We did not have public comments, but the public is permitted to call in to make comments ahead of time. We need notices, et cetera, et cetera. We have in the past done a lot of our work through standing committees. Standing committees are also subject to the public meeting law, and we have not been working through our committees for that reason. We have, in the city of Asheville, has had to also work to figure out how to accommodate all of these organizations and committees through the public meeting law with the video and the remote access and all of that. And as a result, our meeting times have been cut back. We were meeting once a month, and our bylaws say we should meet once a month. We were also having committee meetings, usually once a month, and we haven't had any of those committee meetings. So I feel as though our communication, and I know a lot of people on the committee have been working very hard at the issues that we deal with. But I certainly feel as though our communication has been somewhat short-circuited, and I don't think there's any way to keep our energy going when we're only meeting once every other month. Anyway, so we do need to talk about a lot of things, and one of them is hopefully we will get back to actual in-person meetings before too long, but I don't know what I don't think we can plan on that. I think for the time being, we're going to have to assume that this is the way that we're functioning. So anyway, one thing I did, anyway, I'm making a list of we do need some specific things we have to work on. I did I did communicate with most of the members of the team one-on-one, which is not subject to public meeting laws, about what they felt priorities should be going forward. And I was able to talk to most people. I'm happy to talk to anybody pretty much anytime they want. I'm sort of semi-retired. I can't say I'm retired because I still seem to be working, but I don't have the same time commitments that most of you with real jobs have. The conversations were interesting. They were also interesting because one thing kept coming up. I don't have a lot of data that I have to tabulate here, because nearly everybody said as their first item that what we really need in Asheville is a low barrier shelter, and either with, or we also need to have a significant behavioral health component. And I think this is, this is what's been in the news. And, again, I feel bad for not meeting, because homelessness, homeless issues, whatever, have been, front page newspaper on a fairly regular basis. And I do feel as though we should be not necessarily specifically addressing these issues, but at least act like we're taking them seriously. And, low barrier shelter with a significant behavioral health component obviously is something we need. Nobody had any brilliant ideas as to how we were going to get it. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure anybody thought it was possible to get, but in terms of it being a priority, obviously it's something we need to be thinking about and talking about. Other issues that came up were dealing with young adults in terms of case management, like 21 to 25, 26 people who are getting out of the foster care system don't have any particular disability, whatever that makes them qualified for services, but do not have the framework, do not have the family backup, networking, whatever, that helps you make good decisions when you are a young adult trying to figure out how to become a productive member of society. Another issue that came up was landlord outreach in terms of finding housing. We did have some comments on more meetings, and also, Brian, you mentioned at one point in time that we would have some sort of an in-service so that people could become more familiar with our terminology, what we're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, I have that planned tentatively for April 16th from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. So mark that date on your calendar, and we'll do that kind of orientation and overview, kind of continuum of care and homelessness 101 in Asheville, for both members of this committee, new, and members who have been on for a while who want to get sort of reoriented on that. And certainly, we've had some discussion with foundations who are also interested in having a better understanding of how care works, and we'll certainly extend the invitation to those folks as well. So Friday, April 16th, 9:30 to 11 is what we've tentatively scheduled.
Okay. And so that's great. One of the things that has come up, a work group is not subject to public meeting laws, right? We distributed that statement, or that with the agenda, didn't we? The difference between public meeting laws and work groups. Work groups are okay.
That's correct. And there was, as part of the information that was distributed in the board meeting package, the clerk's office that, sort of oversees boards and commissions, has asked us to really move towards using work groups and task forces rather than, creating and empowering subcommittees. And certainly, we have existing work groups. For example, our coordinated access and veterans coordinated access meetings, those are work groups, and, the issues that are discussed there that are client related are all confidential. There's a process for being able to join those groups. So, I think the clerk's office certainly wants us to ask, wants us to consider the dissolution of our existing standing committees and perhaps move more towards creating task forces that are specifically focused on one or two issues for a limited period of time to come back to the committee with recommendations to then endorse and then, advance to a city council and county commission. And, I think given some of the opportunities that we have with new funding coming into the system, some, critical mass of interest and urgency around low barrier shelter and things like that have been longstanding needs in the community. I would certainly, like to see us do a really significant bylaws review to do the suggested dissolution of those committees and start to have some discussions about, what some of these items that you mentioned, there's consensus in the membership about, Eileen, from your conversations, to, start to create task forces to, work for some period of time to come back with some recommendations on those specific things. So I think there's a unique opportunity for this committee to energize and really get some specific and targeted advocacy on things that have been longstanding needs in the community. So.
Is that something we can do today? Can we meet? Can we meet more often? I hate to bring up something like this and then not meet again until May.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I can reach out to the clerk's office. There is, for the time being, there is a process that I, as the staff liaison, have been asked to follow, that if we want to meet more frequently, that I have to make a request to the city manager's office. I think there's some group of executives that review the urgency of that need, and then will get back to me and say, yes, you can proceed with additional meetings. So I can certainly make that request of the city manager's office and see if we can do that. Certainly, I don't think there's any provision in our bylaws that would preclude us doing some specific task forces, creating a couple today. But if it's something that we want to, as we've been asked, make a sort of a permanent fixture in our bylaws, that will require an update to our bylaws, which from a HUD regulatory standpoint, we're required to do every year anyway. So we're kind of overdue for it. And my suggestion would be to have one group gather to look at the bylaws and dissolution of subcommittees, and then to get another group together to talk about low barrier shelter. Those would be the two things that just I, as the staff liaison, would recommend. There's already a group that's working, meeting monthly to talk about youth homelessness issues. Been some really lively discussions on that. I wish Amy Hobson was here to give us some input on those groups' discussions, but it's been meeting regularly for Emily, 3 or 4 months now. And certainly a lot of interesting topics have come up there. Elida has dipped their toe in the water with both ESG funding as well as some home tenant-based rental assistance dollars. So, they're going to be coming online as a potential housing provider. So those are all very exciting things, but it is time to look at our bylaws, to look at the recommendation that's been made by the city clerk's office to dissolve existing standing committees. And I think the time is right to have a task force to begin looking at low barrier shelter in particular.
Okay. So I don't have anything actually prepared for this. Should we have a motion to set up a task force for low barrier shelters?
I
David has
think-
his hand up.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second? Nobody wants to second it? Nobody wants to do it. I think Jason seconded it.
Yeah.
Okay, just voting in favor doesn't mean you have to be on it.
Right. So, Madam Chair, so the motion is to create a task force to examine options for creation of a low barrier shelter. Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to be sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So Meredith?
I have a quick question. I understand there is a group called Anchor that is already having these conversations. I just want to make sure we're not duplicating some of those efforts. And I know they've been meeting for a while and they've been meeting with city leadership. So I just want to make sure what we would be doing wouldn't be on a different path or in any way duplicating. I don't know if anybody in this group is a representative of Anchor who could speak to that.
Is that the group you were talking about, Brian? Okay.
Emily can answer that question, I think.
I mean, I would think, if I could just say something first, I mean, I would think that our group would be tasked to finding out what's going on with other groups and make sure that we are coordinated. We are supposed to have a particular status by virtue of being a city authorized advisory committee. So, I mean, I think our end result could be saying we agree with them. I mean, I don't see us going in different directions. But Emily, go ahead.
I am not part of Anchor. Anchor, if y'all are not familiar, is it's a collective impact model. So it's a group of folks who've come together who are connected largely to behavioral health care, including a lot of peer support activity. And really, early on, their focus was and continues to be about behavioral health support across a real continuum of need and across the community. So not specific to homelessness. Of course, that does really interface a lot with homelessness. And so they have been talking about a proposal around low barrier shelter. And they had initially, I don't know the timeline of all this, but they had gotten some funding from Dogwood for a convener to sort of facilitate that planning process. And the person in that position has just changed, and Amy Upham has taken that. She had been at the county for a while, and prior to that, she was at VIA. So she's been around the community for a long time, working on behavioral health and connected to homeless folks. And she is now sort of leading the charge with Anchor and facilitating a lot of the planning around a low barrier proposal from them. And she and I have had a lot of conversation. I'm continuing to stay connected with her. There's not a proposal yet, but I think we do have, I think what you said, Eileen, is exactly right. I think we do have a lot just like swirling in our community right now about low barrier shelter, the need for that, getting clear on what that actually means and the scope of the need that we have. How many beds should that be? What do we know from our data? What kind of services need to be there? So all that's to say, my sort of vision of how this flows is that we have this big sort of like whirlwind happening, and eventually it tunnels down into an actual intervention that gets developed and has some ongoing financial support from a variety of sources across the community.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So I guess I would just want to make sure that we are aware of the work that they're doing, just because I know that they've made some progress lately, and I don't know what that is. I know we have a representative who's part of that. Robert Stevenson, our outreach program manager, has been part of those conversations, and that's been a priority for them, low barrier shelter. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Sure.
I think I can certainly help be some of that bridge between a work group and other pieces that are happening in the community.
Yes, we want to make sure you stay busy.
So there has been a motion and a second to create a task force to examine options for low barrier shelters. Is there any additional discussion?
I think Tim has a hand raised.
Yeah, I would like to suggest that, representatives from the Anchor Group come and present to HIAC before we do anything task force wise.
Sure.
And then hear what they have to say and then make the decision on, moving forward with the task force.
So are you suggesting that we not create the task force today, that we ask them to provide a report to this group before we move forward with that?
Yes, I would ask that we table the task force and then have them present to us at our next meeting and then look at the task force at that point.
So
I don't have a problem with that.
I get, is that a friendly amendment, or David, do you want to withdraw your?
Why don't I withdraw my motion?
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
As long as Jason's okay with that.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Should we make that into a motion that needs to be seconded?
I think, David, since you withdrawn your motion, I think it's just we recognize in the minutes that we'd like to get a formal report from Anchor to this committee at its next meeting, and I'll be happy to facilitate that along with Emily. So.
Very good. Okay. What else? Okay, do we need a bylaws committee?
That would be.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, bylaws.
We don't have any committees.
Yeah, that's always the fun work that nobody really wants to do. Governance is so boring.
Well, I can do that at least initially. If somebody else wants to, that's fine. Or I could just.
Is the main purpose to eliminate the committees?
I think, yeah. I mean, I don't think we have a lot of problem with the bylaws myself.
Yeah,
but I haven't looked at them in depth either.
Yeah, there are several tweaks that need to be made. One of which is that, in our existing bylaws, even though, we say we are the NC 501 governance committee, there's nothing in our bylaws that says that. And that's something that question has come up in my discussions with people at HUD. So, I think there's some language tweaks like that, the dissolution of the committees, just make sure that, we've got, if there are any sort of guidance that has come down that, we've not incorporated into our existing bylaws. I think it'd be a matter of, just looking at the regulations, looking at some processes, that sort of stuff. But I agree with Eileen. I think, we've got a good working framework, but, obviously it's been a long time since we've done any updates. I think the last time we did any updates is when we needed to ask Dan Garrett to stay on for an additional year as chair. And there was some other thing, to approve non-HIAC members to be able to serve on standing committees. And that's been almost 2 years ago that we made those changes. And now we're being asked to dissolve the committees. So it's time to have a little bit of work on the bylaws for sure.
Does anybody else want to work on bylaws?
We have 4 lawyers at least on this call, so I volunteer each of us to work with you as the lead.
Okay.
You have the most time.
Okay.
So do we want to have a?
Okay.
Okay. Do we need to have a motion to appoint, or do y'all want to just gather and begin some discussion? Is no motion? Okay, gather.
I don't. If you feel like a motion is needed, I'll make it. But I think we can, from what you're talking about, I think we can look at it, work with the staff to bring back a recommendation to the.
So it's really a working group. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who's the other attorney? I know Eileen Parker, David. Who's the other lawyer we have?
I see Sarah, I think, but oh no, okay, sorry, my bad.
Okay.
Okay, so
three of us would be able to handle it. Look,
Yeah,
three
we
of
can
us
do
we
it.
might not get tied up in knots if there's just three of us.
all right. Well, I'll follow up with y'all on some emails, and we'll get that moving.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that's all I have for the time being. Do we have any additional questions, comments?
If there's time, I can give an update on the Lee Walker Maple Crest
Oh,
apartment.
please do. Yes.
And I can also share, I haven't done this in Google, but if you can let me share my screen.
Sure.
Or maybe I can just do that.
You can just do that.
Lower right-hand corner where it says present now.
Yeah, I'm getting there. There we go. Hold on. All right, can you all see it?
Yes.
I'm going to try to do a slideshow. Sometimes it works on this kind of remote call and sometimes not. So here's the status. Can everybody see the overall picture of the development?
I think we're stuck on the first slide.
Yeah. Let's try it one other way. If this doesn't work, I'll just talk you through it. All right, so can everybody see the PowerPoint or no?
No, I think you stopped
can't.
sharing your screen.
I haven't shared it again. So now I got to go back here and that. And yes. And there you can see it, right?
Yes.
And now you can see a picture.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we're about 90% complete with the entire development. The building on the right of this picture is currently open and leasing. 24 people have signed leases and moved in. The building in the middle is, the contractor is hoping to turn it over to us at the end of April, although that may slip until the middle of May. And then there are 5 smaller buildings down here that will come in either at the end of May or sometime in June. Here's an aerial view of it. They have built a fence right here between the construction side of the project and the residential side. And you can kind of tell from where the parking spots have been painted what's open. The name is Maple Crest Apartments at Lee Walker Heights. This is the view coming up the hill on Lee Garden Lane, which used to be called Wilbar Avenue. It used to be the main entrance. And it is the residential entrance right now, but at the end of the project, it will be a secondary entrance. This is the first building looking up the hill as you drive up. And then on the right-hand side is the side of the building that faces toward downtown. This is the courtyard of that building with a little bit of downtown in the background. Another couple of versions of that same thing. The people who live on that side of the building are going to have the best fireworks viewing in town. So. This is a 1-bedroom unit. The living and kitchen space is open. So this is looking from the living space toward the kitchen. And this is looking from the kitchen toward the living space. in a sample 1-bedroom unit. This is the bedroom. All of the apartments have ceiling fans and all are air conditioned, which is unusual for us. It's the first for us. These are views out of the living room window of that unit on the left and the bedroom window on the right. This is the bathroom. And this is the hallway. That unit is a couple doors down on the right. The left-hand side is looking down the hallway, and you can see the second building in the background. And then I just turned 180 degrees and took the picture out the window at the end of the hallway. So, does anybody want to see any of those pictures again, or I can just tell you what the numbers are real quick? We'll go back to the overview. So the building that's open has 64 units, primarily 1-bedroom units. The large building in the middle has 100 units, and it includes 1s, 2s, and 3s. These two buildings are a total of 24 2-bedroom units with walk-ups. And these are 1s, 2s, and 3s on a 2-story format. We have somewhere between 41 and 45 formerly Walker residents moving back. That number was around 60 when we asked people this time last year, but a number of people have decided to stay where they are. And we are giving them that choice, but encouraging them to move back if they want to. So they will take 41 to 45 units, and some of them have already moved back into the first building. Many are waiting for larger bedroom sizes to open up, or for other buildings to open up. The 96 units, which are, I think, at least 51 bedroom units that replace the old Lee Walker and are from our waiting list, will be prioritized based on our waiting list. People will still have to be screened by Partnership Property Management, but there won't be a credit screen, and the criminal record screen is focused on away from small misdemeanors and toward more serious crimes of violence or drug-related. And in addition, the 116 other units that are not RAD project-based vouchers will be available to people with tenant-based vouchers. And 30 of those will be TCLI priority units. So, any questions about that? Can stop sharing to.
Is it right that the 41 that have moved back in are part of the 96?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Is it right that the 41 that have moved back in are part of the 96?
Not necessarily. Some people moved with tenant-based vouchers to other MHO properties or other private rentals, and if they already have a tenant-based voucher, they're coming back with a tenant-based voucher to one of the 116 units. So we have, our applications office has sent over 40 applications primarily for 1 and 2 bedroom units to be processed. And PPM has been actively taking applications for the other 116 units.
David, what was the average per unit cost on the vertical development piece on this? Do you know off the top of your head?
The cost of development?
Yeah, just the vertical cost of the development, yeah.
I think the total development cost from my memory is around $170,000 per unit.
Thank you.
It really looks great. I talked to somebody at the vaccine clinic at Haywood Street Wednesday who has just moved in, and she was enthusiastic about how nice it is.
We had one long-term resident who I saw in the office, and he pulled me aside and he said, "This is fantastic. I've never lived in a place with air conditioning before." So, he's lived in Lee Walker Heights, I believe, for all, if not most of his life. So.
Well, thank you for that, David. Yes.
Awesome work and just awesome collaboration with a lot of partners. So hats off to you and your team on that.
Thank you. Feel free to reach out if anybody has any follow-up questions.
Okay. So are we at our adjournment?
I believe we are. So do we need a motion and a second to adjourn?
Can I just
I
ask one
don't
quick question? I'm
Sure.
sorry, I know I was late, but did Emily or someone give an update about COVID and the testing and the vaccine?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check about that.
Yes. And I'm sure. Do you want,
Oh, I know, but I just wanted to make sure because of the call
Okay.
yesterday, and it's been great and all of the work that Emily and all of the other partners are doing. So I just wanted to make sure that got mentioned. So.
it did. It did.
did.
Yes. And thank you. Okay. So if there is nothing else to be added, we can adjourn.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Keep up the good work.
You too.
Thank you, Randy. Let's see, how do I get out of this?